The rise of the Sacramento Kings, the fall of the Warriors, it seems like. What's going to happen next? Jalen Hurts gets a deal. And just when we least expected on NFL trade, one more happened today. Allen Robinson gets moved to the Steelers. Corsian, hit that intro music. We'll discuss. Alrighty, so that was a pretty mid intro, to be honest. But we're just trying some new things out on the podcast, just just to see where this goes. This is like maybe our fifth episode in total for on the YouTube channel, so we thought we'd spice things up a little bit. But the NBA playoffs are well underway. As we're talking right now, Celtics have a 9-point lead going into the fourth quarter. I feel pretty confident that they're going to go up 2-0 on the Hawks, but never know what happens. Jonathan Murray is just hitting shots, and the Celtics are leaving open and daring him to shoot. So props to him for that. But I think the Celtics are too deep this year that they're going to easily come out of the series. Corsian, with that said, are there any teams that you wanted to talk about that are going up and down?
All I can say, playoff Jimmy is here. That's all you need to know. Jimmy Butler, regular season, he has his good games, he has his bad games. Heat have their good games or bad games, but you got playoff Jimmy. It's the playoffs. He turns into Michael Jordan. You can't dispute it. He's the best. Heat all the way, obviously. I mean, you don't have to believe me. No one has to believe me, but I believe. So there you go. It's my only take, the best take, the only take.
Brilliant analysis, as always. Yeah, we're done. We're going to end this podcast episode. No, but I completely agree with you. Jimmy Butler's been absolutely amazing. He's reminding us what all he can do from the bubble that year. I think it was 2020, 2021, when the NBA went to the bubble and he ended up losing the series to the Lakers, but Jimmy played phenomenally. So props to him. He's going on another run. I think it was a mix of good fortune for the Heat. Obviously, you hope that Tyler Hero is okay. But I think Giannis being out really put a cap on what the Bucks can do with the resources they had available to them. I like to talk about 3 teams that I watched over the past weekend that I thought were really stood out to me. One was the Lakers versus the Grizzlies kind of matchup. I was a little disappointed on how I saw the Grizzlies attacking the Lakers. Obviously, you hope that Ja's okay, but after watching Game 1, I don't feel confident that the Grizzlies can win the series against the Lakers, because what I see them doing is I see them trying to attack Anthony Davis and LeBron James one-on-one. And even though LeBron James is not as good as a defender as he was when he was on the Heat, I think he's a very intelligent IQ defensive player. And I think that goes unnoticed. And I think the Grizzlies are rushing into their shots rather than being patient, taking what the defense is giving them ball movement. And they focus on attacking the basket way too much and taking not great decisions as far as shooting the ball. And I think that's going to come down to bite them at the very end. I still think they can win a couple games in that series, but I don't think it's looking good for them, especially if Ja's going to be out an extended time. I was really impressed by the Clippers. Defensively, what they did against the Suns, especially Russell Westbrook. I think a lot of people thought when PG went down, that was it for the Clippers. And it's still possible the Suns can win the series, but I would by no means count the Clippers out, even when they're up 1-0, because I think they have the defensive pieces to put a clamp on the Suns' offense. And Russell Westbrook, whether he shoots it good or bad, he is always going to put in other contributions on the court. And I think you saw that last night, or 2 nights ago. So the Clippers are for real. I don't think the Thunder. I don't think the Suns should be sleeping on them. As far as the last team, I'm really excited about this team because there's a lot of chess match pieces going on. The Kings have really stood out to me. As far as their pace of play, you could see it, and it almost reminds me of the Warriors when they were in their first year under Steve Kerr. Just from the aspect that Mike Brown, the coach, is letting his players take the risky shots because they're moving the ball, they're playing with fast pace. And I think that's a little bit different from what the Memphis Grizzlies were doing, because they're actually buying into the Kings are actually buying into Mike Brown's philosophy on like pushing the pace. They have a lot of younger players to make up for that. And I think even though the Warriors can still put up buckets, I thought their defense was very lackadaisical because of that pace of play. And as it gets into the third and fourth quarter, it gets very tiring. And I just want to kind of disclaimer for De'Aaron Fox. Love that dude to death. He is such a high IQ player when he gets into the paint and deciding whether to float or whether drive by somebody. That's really underrated in my opinion, and it's going to cause the Warriors all sorts of problems. So that's my NBA takes. I know I went for a lot, but those are three teams that stood out to me when watching the game so far. We'll see what happens to the Clippers and Suns tonight and how the Suns will make adjustments.
Yeah, and like we kind of talked about this last week, but we did say, this playoffs, it really is anybody's game. Well, a lot of teams get hot at the end, some teams kind of cool down. So obviously there are stronger teams in the playoffs, but again, I feel like, the last couple of years too have been like this, but it's been really refreshing, a lot of fun just having a lot of just kind of crazy games where it could really be anybody's game right now for just, advancing in the playoffs and obviously going to the end, but it's exciting.
Yeah. And if the Kings draw the Lakers and it ends up being the Kings versus the Lakers next round, I would not count out the Kings, no matter how, I don't care about their inexperience. They know who they are and they know how to play, and they're creating movement on offense. They know where to go. They're sharing the ball. That stuff matters in the playoffs. And the Celtics did it last year before they ran into the Warriors in the middle of the finals, where they stopped doing it for whatever reason. And those teams that play that way on offense are going to succeed. That's why Denver's been so successful. So, yeah, like you mentioned, it's really anyone's series, especially in the Western Conference. And I don't think the seeding matters because there have been so many injuries. Look at the first couple of games that have happened. There's so many injuries already, in the whole NBA for the playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see. Mm-hmm. Moving on to the NFL. We'll spend the majority of our topic today covering the mock draft. We're going to go through the first round, pick by pick, and giving our thoughts and analysis. But before we do that, there's a couple of news circulating around over the past 2 days. One, Jalen Hurts got his money. He got 255, I believe, for 5 years, and then at least $173 guaranteed. 173 million. I'd hope it's that much. But yes, 173 million people guaranteed. What do you think this means for the quarterback market?
Well, obviously, he's getting the biggest contract. Per year on a per year basis so far, and I just think that it's always smart, I guess, to get ahead of the market, because you kind of think about when Patrick Mahomes got his huge deal, everybody was kind of going crazy thinking, oh man, what are the Chiefs going to do, for the next decade? They're paying him a ridiculous amount. But all of a sudden now Patrick Mahomes, everyone's saying, oh man, Chiefs really, they won that deal now, just looking at how the contracts are getting more and more with all these quarterbacks. I think it's fully deserved for Jalen Hurts. And obviously future quarterbacks going to, go off of this market that they have right now. And see, Lamar's probably looking at this deal and thinking, I want to get that deal. I'm sure Joe Burrow, when he gets his contract extension, he's going to be looking at this Jalen Hurts thing and think, I want a deal like this. And so it just keeps on ramping up the market. Obviously cap space keeps on going up too, but it's kind of just fun to see, I guess, these yearly records get beaten for per pay basis, but it'll just keep on going as we've seen over the course of the NFL with contracts.
Yeah. That's to be expected. As the salary cap increases with more viewers tuning into games and watching high profile teams, especially in the AFC, it's the salary cap's only going to go up. The amount of guarantees that players are going to get is only going to get up, no matter what position. Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, I imagine they're going to get the same deals around that ballpark. But I wouldn't be surprised if slightly higher, slightly lower. But I think the biggest loser in this was the Ravens, if we believe that they offered Lamar 133 guaranteed to be true, like 133 million guaranteed. Keep talking in like just hundreds, not millions. But I think this makes it easier on them to understand what's the framework of a Lamar Jackson deal. So that helped clarify that on that front. Now it's the question of, do they want to offer him that money? And as a result, what's their philosophy as far as the spending with the salary cap they have going to look like as a result of this deal? So I think both sides of the negotiating table between Lamar Jackson and the Ravens got more clarity with this deal. And you should see a resolution to this too. Okay. Now the news we've been waiting for. This is an interesting one. I wonder what your take on this. The Rams traded this Allen Robinson to the Steelers. Obviously, Allen Robinson signed with LA last year. There are a lot of high hopes given that what we saw from Odell and Cooper Kupp on the Rams team when they won the Super Bowl. And then we were projecting what kind of difference that Matthew Stafford would make for Allen Robinson. It didn't turn out that way. And then after one season, the Rams decided to trade Allen Robinson. What do you think this means for the Rams, Steelers, or both?
Yeah, so with the Rams, and in all honesty, I don't think really much changes with their offense. Their entire offense went through Cooper Kupp last season and the year, he is the offense. And so, we kind of saw that with the fact that almost nobody else was targeted in that offense besides Cooper Kupp, which is great for my fantasy team. But it kind of, it's hard to play good football when you only have that one target that, dominates everything, especially with Cam Akers in the beginning of the season. He wasn't really playing like you wanted him to. So then you're stuck with Darrell Henderson, who now isn't even on the team. So I think, the Rams continue as is. I mean, Van Jefferson, he's proven that he can play some good football. You have Tutu Atwell, who he's fast, it's kind of small. So you kind of got somebody there. But for the Steelers, I do think this is a good move. I think you have a quarterback who, while not as good as Matthew Stafford, I think has a better does a better job at kind of spreading the football around more, at least, with just kind of the different receiving talent that they have. And I think it's really good that the Steelers get a veteran presence more than anything, I think, just because you look at their receivers, you look at their tight end, you look at their whole offense is really, really young right now. And even if, yeah. And so even if Allen Robinson does, do as good as his early Chicago or Jacksonville days, I think just his, veteran leadership there should hopefully provide a lot of help for just a lot of that young receiving talent and just kind of helping gel that offense together, whether or not he can return back to that, wide receiver one kind of standout status quo that he used to play at.
Does your outlook on the Steelers change, like as far as production and record heading into next season? This is all before the draft, based on what you see from the team right now.
I think they have a lot of potential. They're a really tricky team to analyze, obviously, just because they have a lot of young developing pieces. They lost a couple players on defense. So it's really up in the air. I still see them around like a 500-ish team, maybe. Obviously, if Kenny Pickett, for whatever reason, develops into the next superstar quarterback, that's obviously going to change how they could go 16 or 17-0 now, but realistically, I don't see him developing that much. I think he will improve, but around a 500 record, maybe before they be just under or like 2 or 3 games under 500. But I think that Allen Robinson helping is kind of a developmental piece for the rest of the offense could kind of boost them up to that 500, just above 500 level.
Yeah. I always loved Allen Robinson when he was on the Bears. He made a lot of great plays, wide receiver one. I wouldn't put him on the level of like Chase or Jefferson because one weakness is he doesn't have like long speed to outrun defenders after he catches the ball. He's more like that intermediate route runner that can gain separation through his route running itself, and then get those 15 to 20-yard gains. He can do it. He did it against the Falcons one time. And he can catch like deep vertical routes too. That's in his wheelhouse. But you're not going to see him like outrun safeties and cornerbacks like Tyree Hill. Like that's not the type of player you're getting here. But he is a competent wide receiver one. So that helps the Steelers offense. When I'm looking at their wide receivers and George Pickens and then Deontay Johnson as their starting receivers, I think this moves Deontay Johnson to the slot role, where the primary roles that George Pickens will play on, or whether it's like the outside X boundary receiver. So it's gonna keep them pigeonholed in those roles. I think if you look at Deontay Johnson, he was one of like the least efficient high volume receivers in the NFL last year. So I think putting him in the slot is going to help him out a lot as far as gaining more separation going against a third cornerback. And this is gonna help Kenny Pickett because Allen Robinson knows how to get open in zones. Obviously, it's really easy to read coverage when it's a man coverage, but for Kenny Pickett, who I thought was the best in the mediocre class, he is going to improve like steadily. It remains to see like how much, but I don't think it's going to be exponential. I agree with you. I see them as a 500 team. I don't think this moves the needle that much. The Rams, I think it's more of like a salary cap dumping, and I don't have much confidence in them like heading toward the year. Obviously, Matthew Stafford can change that, and I would look for them to address wide receiver in the draft, which we'll talk about soon. And I don't think you'll see Tutu Atwell and Van Jefferson be heavily relied upon because they have like weaknesses they need to get over. Van Jefferson's a very good deep threat, whereas Tutu Atwell needs some work on the catch point. So I would definitely look for them to pick up somebody in like the second, third rounds, like type level receiver. If they can get a bargain in later rounds, that works well too. But you're right. It's still going to be about Cooper Kupp. Tyler Higbee might see an increase in targets naturally, but we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. So we thought we'd do something a little bit different today instead of going through about like 10 or 12 like discussion topics like we've been doing in the previous couple of episodes. We realized the draft's in about 9 days from now. So we thought we'd cover at least the first 3 rounds and what we think is going to happen, and then compare that later on after the fact with what the teams actually did, and then give our divisional assessments after the fact. So this is just our this is our assessment of what we think the teams will do if we were the GMs and picking these players out. So they might not go this route. There's a lot of rumors circulating around, but how this is going to work is we're each going to alternate picks, and then throughout these picks, we're going to discuss why we think each team will pick the players they're going to pick right now. And with that, Christian, are you ready to get started?
I am ready to get started.
Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get the mock draft started. You can see the screen right now, right? I have
yes.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start the draft, and we'll get started.
Nice.
You're on the clock, Christian. Who you got?
Okay, so with the Panthers, I have them taking Bryce Young, quarterback, Alabama.
Why Bryce?
I think, he's considered one of either the best or the second best quarterback in this class as of right now. Think at first everyone was talking about CJ Stroud for whatever reason. Teams have all of a sudden decided to fade CJ Stroud, which I think is kind of weird. But regardless, I think he is either him or CJ Stroud are the top 2 quarterbacks in this class. And so Bryce Young, great talent. They got some pieces on offense. I think he's a fit. They need a quarterback, obviously, as well. So that's why I picked Bryce Young for quarterback for the Panthers.
Okay, sweet. So that leaves me at number 2 with the Texans.
Mhm.
Been hearing a lot of rumors about if Bryce Young is not there, the Texans are not going to pick him. I don't believe that. I think they're just trying to drive leverage up with the second pick to
Mhm.
trade out of potentially by doing that. I
Mhm.
think they're still going to go quarterback because even though Davis Mills has been a solid QB, he hasn't made as many incremental changes.
Mhm.
So with that said, I don't think they're going to go Will Anderson here or trade down. I think they're going to go CJ Stroud.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Um, then with the number 3 overall pick, I say the Cardinals will select a player here. That player being Will Anderson Jr. from Alabama.
Not a bad,
Um,
not a bad, not a bad selection.
yeah, and I know there's a lot of talk about the Cardinals trading down. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if a team trades up to the number 3 spot to go quarterback, but I think the Cardinals, they get an opportunity to draft a phenomenal defensive player that can be a solid, be their edge guy for the next like 9-10 years or something like that, and be there through potentially multiple rebuilds if they really need to wait that long to get good again. But I think that their defense, especially they lost their defensive they lost their defensive coordinator. They lost Zach Allen, who's a pretty solid defensive lineman. Buda Baker's looking for a trade. I think they lost Byron Murphy as well on defense, and so I think the Cardinals, if they can't get a huge haul, going Will Anderson is really great. Gives them another defensive piece to kind of try to make up for all the pieces they lost this offseason, and hopefully kind of turn that defense back around.
Yeah, and if you think about what they've been building with the linebacker spots, they have invested a lot. They have invested in David Collins. I know there's another linebacker that I'm missing. 100%. Can't put my finger on it right now. But this would give them an edge because, no pun intended, because you could play Will Anderson at the defensive end or the outside linebacker in Jonathan Gagnon's system. And I think this is like the foundational piece that would allow them to do that. So I don't argue with the pick at all. I'm thanking you if I'm the GM of the Colts because I would be stressed out. Like I'll be if I'm a Colts GM, I'd be like, do I have to trade up to 3 just to make sure nobody else like snipes my pick? I'd be super nervous if I was Colts fan, Colts GM right now. But under this mock draft, I'm taking my stars because you gave me the highest potential QB out of this entire draft. And I think it's Anthony Richardson.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Colts are tired of going to the veteran QB route, where there's like Phillip Rivers, Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz. They have Gardner Minshew, so they don't have to play Anthony Richardson right away.
Yeah. Minshew's gonna take over.
Minshew's
Minshew-mania.
Yeah, Minshew Mania. He's streaky, so he's gonna get them to 500. Like he's gonna pull off like a 2 or 3 win streak. I'm just speaking out of confidence here, obviously. With that talent on the roster that they have in the Colts, and I think Anthony Richardson can then take over if they see some fundamental flaws in Minshew still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then with the number 5 overall pick, I think everybody just kind of talking about this pick in general is like a pretty straightforward one, and that being Tyree Wilson. I feel like but this mock draft, literally every other mock draft I've seen, the Seahawks go Tyree Wilson. It's probably one of the best, best player available situations that you have. Obviously Jalen Carter's another phenomenal player, but I do think that edge is just slightly more valuable here for the Seahawks right now, and they get their guy with Tyree Wilson.
Yeah, no, 100%. I have no arguments there. Tyree Wilson is like a headliner of like a really strong and deep edge class. If Will Anderson wasn't there, he'd probably be a top 5 pick anyway. That's how good his talent ceiling is. So I don't think it's people reaching for defensive ends after Will Anderson's gone. Tyree Wilson could easily be the best defensive end in like any class. It's just that you have a once in a generational player ahead of him that people would rather take. But he's in that tier, like slightly below Will Anderson. So I don't blame you for picking that. I'm so tempted to go Jalen Carter here. I'm really tempted to do it because on the Lions, you have a lot of good pieces on the defensive line. You just got Aiden Hutchinson, who I think is a budding star at that position.
Mhm.
It's tough. I'm conflicted here. I want to go Jalen Carter so badly.
Uh-huh. I think that's a phenomenal move personally for the Lions to make.
Of
I mean,
course you do.
obviously
Of
you
course
can
you do.
go other spots, but I feel like when a player like Jalen Carter falls into your lap at the sixth pick, it's like, well, because before like all the news of him, like I forgot what it was, but like he obviously fell in the rankings, and then now all of a sudden you have a guy who is
Yeah,
considered like a
because he
top.
I believe it's like he he was involved in like he was running from the crime scene.
Yeah.
That was what all the speculation was about. So then people are like, oh, was he involved in killing his teammate all of a sudden and driving that narrative around? And then talking about like that spurred into like a bunch of talking about his effort level on the field. And I'm just like, even when Georgia had who's the Eagles defensive tackle now? They just drafted.
They just
Um,
drafted. Oh shoot. Oh, it's I
how are we
can't believe
blanking on this?
I literally know like all their other defensive
They call him the
linemen.
Fletcher Cox replacement.
Uh,
Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis.
yeah,
Even when
that's what it
Jordan
is.
Davis was on that stacked Georgia defense the year before, um, the like Jalen Carter was still the best player out of that defense. Like you just see him wrecking shot. Like obviously he's a different type of player than Aaron Donald, but he still wins his matchup like at an
Mhm.
extraordinary rate. And I'm like, how do you not pass like you can't pass on that. Um,
Mhm.
you persuaded me here. I like my other reasoning was I think the Lions would go corner here, even though they allocated so much in the free agency period.
Yeah.
Because if you look at Emmanuel Mosley, he gets hurt a lot, like from the past couple of years. That's not somebody I would rely upon to for over a 16 game season, even though they have a stacked set of cornerbacks. Now you
Yeah.
think adding somebody like Joey Porter Jr., Christian Gonzalez, and Devon Witherspoon, they're all phenomenal selections here. So that
Yeah.
was the other argument I would have gone with, but I think he
Yeah.
had me hooked on Jalen Carter.
Yeah. And then another thing with the Lions in cornerback, they do have the 18th pick in the draft as well, I believe. And
Mhm.
this is a somewhat deep cornerback class too. And so, you go Jalen Carter here, you get potentially the best defensive player in this class. And then on top of that, you may not get the number one corner, but you might get, maybe like the number 3 or 4 corner in this class regardless. Which is still a first round talent in my opinion for this class.
Depends on where we're ranking them. Yeah, I would say the top three in this class. I would anticipate them to go in the top 10, if not top 12. But that's how highly I think of these cornerbacks.
Mhm.
So that was my thinking. Like at back at if you see them picking at 18, are you still gonna get a chance to want a Devon Witherspoon or Joey Porter Jr.? I don't
Uh-huh.
know. So
Yeah.
and you could always go edge. Like we see Miles Murphy right there. And then like other edge defenders coming lower in the draft. So um, like you can make the same case on the D line as well. Either
Yeah.
way, it's a tough choice, but like, so we're arguing over two different kinds of riches here.
Yeah. Yeah. But I guess yeah, then going to the next pick in the draft though, the Raiders, let's give them Paris Johnson, offensive tackle.
Okay.
I mean, there's various holes on that Raiders team in general, but I think, you can't go wrong with, a high rated offensive lineman coming into the draft, especially when you got good capital. But, taking the first tackle in the draft is always pretty exciting just because you get, the pick of whoever you wanted. Like the past couple years, I know offensive tackle was a pretty coveted position to get in the draft. And so Raiders being able to take the first one, whoever they want is a tremendous opportunity for them. It gives extra protection for Jimmy Garoppolo, who, has somewhat of a history of getting hurt too. So, you protect him, you might have a tackle for the next, 10 to 10 plus years and solid guy.
Yeah, I think Paris Johnson's the safest tackle in this class. I think um, he he has solid grades, run blocking and pass blocking. So I can't really argue with it. Um, the one thing I would play devil's advocate here is they didn't. I didn't see a real big problem with the core four, like at the tackle position for the Raiders last year. So, and obviously Josh Jacobs had the highest amount of rushing total in yardage over the course of that entire season for the Raiders. So I think their offensive line from the run blocking standpoint did their job. But if you are investing in a guy like Jimmy G, who needs like the right pieces around him to execute at a high level in a functional offense, this is a good move to make.
Mhm.
I'm sort of conflicted here because Atlanta, they're seeming to commit to Desmond Ridder here. I see Will Levis on the board. I'm not going to take him. Not that high.
Good.
Not in the top 10. And they have a couple pieces here. They did trade for Jeff Okuda, which I think is a good move. And Tyler Algier has done a bunch of good things for them.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to go with Bijan Robinson.
Mm.
I think for him, like Algier, like functions really great in a gas scheme heavy offense.
Uh-huh.
But Bijan does everything. I think he is once in a generational running back. You can use him on all three downs. Don't have to worry. You could still play Cordell Patterson like in the slot, put him on jet sweeps where he doesn't have to think as much, and you could still run gap sweep plays for him as well. And I think the trend continues where the events invest in an offensive piece because they're still building this thing up, and this is going to help Kyle Pitts have a rebound season. This is going to help Drake London from the standpoint because Bijan could take it to the house at any time. Inside the tackle, outside the tackle, elusiveness. No matter what you quantify from him, he is able to just do it all.
Yep. Next, we have the Bears. Now, I know this is your team, so I want to hear who you think Chicago should be drafting here right now.
Tough choice here because like as far like if you haven't told can tell already from the podcast, I'm a fan of stacking receivers and like stacking them in the greedy way on offense where you're just like, how the heck did we cover all these guys? Like it makes no sense. So I want to go JSN here because I think JSN is by far the better pick, like out of all these wide receivers in this class. Like you heard Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson mention that JSN is the better athlete, and he still has a way to go as a receiver. But if you stick him in the slot and start him off in the slot, he can be really functional as a go-to guy from the slot position. And when you already have a DJ Moore and you already have a Darnell Mooney, like that can play outside, and DJ Moore can play inside a lot. We need to see more of that from Darnell Mooney. But this gives them versatility, and you can bring in Chase Claypool as a wide receiver 4 in specific situations.
Yeah.
But I know none of this is going to matter if Justin Fields doesn't have the time. And I do not want to take the chance waiting on an offensive tackle in the later rounds. So I'm going to go with Broderick Jones.
That's exactly who I had in my mock draft going to the Bears. Broderick Jones. So we'll stick with him. Bears get, another excellent offensive tackle option. They get the second one off the board, which I think is a great thing. It's like, I think looking at the past couple of drafts, being able to get your tackle at the number 2, at the number 10 spot, it's a pretty nice thing to do. With how teams have been kind of racing to get them the past few seasons.
Coach, I'm totally ignoring the fact that I just picked him anyway before you even went to this explanation. But yeah, it's a much needed position. I think if you're gonna do this right by the offense, like you always seen like growths and spurts in Chicago's offense where they have like one good year, and then like the next season that consistency isn't there. And I think this is the right regime and right coaching in my opinion. But in order for it to be it, you have to build from the trenches. You just have to. Like football starts there. Like Justin Fields can scramble out of it, and right now he's able to do it. But what happens if this mobility drains as a result of all these hits? He's gonna have to learn from the play from the pocket anyway, and learn to pocket manage. He can still do it, but
Yeah.
it helps to have a functional offensive line.
Yeah. And then I think just another concern is like, do you really want to spend that much draft capital on 2 receivers? Because obviously, like,
Exactly.
yeah, you
Yeah.
know, I'm considering their second round pick, which is pick 33 as Chase Claypool. So are you spending, a pick on Chase Claypool and then you draft a wide receiver at 9, and then you also trade down your 1 for a receiver. And so it's like you're getting all this
Give me all the receivers. I don't care. Give me all of them.
Yeah, and so I think it's safe to get an offensive tackle or just offensive line in general. And feel like unless obviously there's a handful turn into busts, but you can't go wrong with shoring up your offensive line.
There's a lot of second round and third round receivers, to your point, that I absolutely love in this class that I think should be first round picks, but NFL teams aren't grading that way. So they're not being considered there at all. So I'm drafting Broderick Jones here if I was doing this from the standpoint that we can get a receiver in the third round that can start for us. Okay, so it's right back to me, even though I totally stole your thunder on what the Bears should do.
No, it's okay. I wanted you to talk.
Yeah, I'll remember that. I'll remember that for when the Broncos come up in the first round. Oh wait, they not. I'm just kidding. I think they'll have a bounce back season with Russell Wilson, but
they better.
But that's a lot of draft capital to invest. Okay, let's go to the Eagles. Picking number 10. I don't think they have many needs like coming off the Super Bowl loss, but obviously when you're projecting like the Jalen Hurts deal that's being done right now and what's going to come down the pipeline for Devontae Smith and the other weapons that they have to address for the draft picks, Jordan Davis in 3 years. So I think you just pick the best player available or trade down. Let's take a look to see who we can trade down from here. So I don't see many options for teams to move up. Like I don't see Tennessee moving up for a receiver because they desperately need some receivers. Let's see here. I could see the Ravens trading up to 10, picking a receiver here. It's not in them. They've traditionally like weighted in value, but
I don't know if they'd go receiver this year though. I mean, at least for their first round pick. Just I don't know with free agency and trades or not trades, but yeah.
So I'm probably gonna stick here at 10, but I could totally see them trading down. I just don't know which teams would trade up right now. Like other than like maybe the Commanders or Tennessee if they're trying to get Will Levis. But if I'm like the GM of those teams, I wouldn't even consider it. Considering that they have Bradbury that recently signed. Who knows how he's going to be 2 years from now? And then Darius Slay just got re-signed. A lot of worries about him coming back. I think relying on those 2 starters to stay with you long term is a risky proposition. None of the cornerbacks have been taken yet. I would go with the best player available. And with that said, I think Christian Gonzalez is the best one compared to Devin Witherspoon. I think he's more versatile. Devin Witherspoon is good at man coverage, but I think with the way that teams play zone now more predominantly to protect like the deep halves in cover 2, cover 4, you need a guy like Christian Gonzalez who has the athleticism and the wingspan to overextend those zones compared to normal cornerbacks with his length. So I think that's hugely advantageous for the Eagles.
Yeah. I think that's a good pick. Okay. Number 11, Tennessee Titans. I'm gonna just say they probably go Jackson Smith, Njigba, JSN, the guy, the man, the myth, the legend.
They need it.
Yeah, like again, like I don't even know like really who the receivers are right now. Obviously they lost Robert Woods. Maybe Kyle Phillips is the guy. It's gonna be the next Cooper Kupp because that's what everybody says is their pro comp for white receivers. He's the next Cooper Kupp, or he was the next Julian Edelman, or he's the next Wes Welker. But regardless, Kyle Phillips is a good slot type build receiver, and he could be really good, but still, Titans receivers not that good. Their tight ends good. I like their tight ends, but yeah,
Okonkwo, I love him. I think he's
Yep.
gonna have a breakout year next year.
Yeah, but I think JSN's a good pick. Obviously, you have a superstar with Derrick Henry. And then it's kind of just another one of those like best player available on offense kind of situations. That you hope that elevates the Titans offense. Kind of, yeah, just doing what you do.
Yeah, and not to be rude, like I think I know where Courtzian's evaluation process in this is, and it's along the lines of me. Like, we don't think Will Levis is worth that much of draft capital much. He's good at the back end of round one. Like, if you're looking at value, but it's one of those Zach Wilson cases. Like, I thought Zach Wilson would be a fantastic QB for the Bears in the middle of the first round, but ranking him as the second best player to Trevor Lawrence is overvaluing the player and putting him in a situation where he's not going to thrive down the line. And while Tennessee definitely has a need at quarterback, and from the reports, it sounds like they're disappointed in Malik Willis, I think compounding that by drafting Will Levis in the first round is only going to make things worse. You still have Ryan Tannehill, who's still a functional QB. Give him more weapons, and I don't think Treylon Burks is a scrub. I just don't think he's not a day one ready as AJ Brown was, even though they have a similar athletic comp. Like he's still a good player that you can see him open, but he's not a number one receiver right now. Jackson Smith, it's funny you mentioned Julian Edelman because I see a lot of Julian Edelman in this game as far as separation goes. So that's a really good thing. It's to have him in the slot. Yes, Kyle Phillips also plays in the slot too, but at this point you're looking at talent in the receiver room, and Tennessee needs him more than anything. So yes, you have a little bit of a redundancy there, but I think it's going to work better when you're projecting long-term value here. Alrighty, good pick, Corson. For the Texans, they're picking 12. Considering this, like what they're trying to build on offense, they let go of Brandon Cooks. They have Nico Collins there. Then John Mechie's coming back. We forget that he was injured, right? So you're looking at how we're going to build this thing around CJ Stroud. They have some solid backfield mates. I believe Devin Singletary's on the Texans now, right?
Devin Singletary, yeah. They drafted. They're not drafted him. They traded for him. Or signed him. I forget how they got him, but they have him. Yes.
All good. Bottom line, he's on the Texans now. So that helps Dameon Pierce, gives them some breathing room. So, and for the Texans, you don't have to worry about like what's going to happen if Dameon Pierce gets hurt. You have enough depth there that you don't have to worry about investing in the running back room at this early in the stage. The wide receivers are looking pretty good. I would consider Zay Flowers here. But I think it's more important to protect the QB you're drafting. So I'm going to go with Peter Skoronski here. All these tackles, like I haven't delved much into them, except for Paris Johnson. But long story short, I think they're all in the same tier. So if you pick any of them as your starting tackle, it's not a bad pick. They're both like equal levels of like blocking. So either way you slice it, you're not losing anything by picking Skoronski over Paris Johnson.
Yeah.
Or Robert Jones.
Yeah. Yeah. Going on to the Jets then, I think I don't know, take pretty standard move and take just Miles Murphy. I think, he's a talented player. Jets, I feel like outside of Zach Wilson have been making, pretty smart but safe moves for their team. And I think he's just like another addition to that where, he's a good player. He it's not necessarily the biggest need maybe, but it definitely helps, generates pressure for their team. Obviously makes their corners job easier. I mean, Sauce Gardner obviously played phenomenal last season, but
you think?
yeah, but then you have your you have great interior line when you have, an aging veteran with CJ Mosley in the middle. You have some, pass rush ability, but I think he kind of gives them a little bit of a step up in terms of that department. And think it's one of the better moves. Obviously, I think another position they could do is cornerback here as well, get some on the other side of Gardner. But again, I think once again, this is a pretty deep class with cornerbacks. And so I think it's safe to take a potential risk maybe in the second or third round, to see if you can get a guy that can be that number 2, especially because you're not looking for a number 1 corner anymore.
Yeah. I don't mind the selection. I think when you have Quinn Williams, do they still have Carl Lawson on that team?
Carl Lawson?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Let's see. He is on that team, yeah.
Yeah, so like you have him at the edge rusher spot. He had a lot of promise before he unfortunately got injured. But I think investing in the D line here to help buffer that secondary is also an argument you can make as well. I don't mind the pick. Personally, I would have gone Devin Witherspoon here. To fully maximize the window of their secondary and help out Aaron Rodgers. I don't think they're trading the 13th pick for him. I think the compensation is going to be second round pick because you don't know what Aaron Rodgers' future is going to be. You don't know how long he's going to play. It's not worth sending like a top 30 pick in that case, who could be valuable for you and have 4 productive years if you hit. So I think they're still going to have the 13th pick at draft day. We'll see what that ends up. With that, I'm going to jump to the Patriots. There's a lot they can go here. I see the cornerbacks, and my rule of thumb always is to go with the best player available when I'm a GM running it. But I just see the fact that I look at their offense. They just traded away Jonnu Smith, and the only reliable weapon prior to them signing Juju Smith-Schuster to me was Hunter Henry, and they didn't utilize him enough, in my opinion. They still have Devontae Parker. They having Juju Smith-Schuster who could play in the slot, but like it's more like a big slot role and a better supporting receiver, in my opinion, that flies off a number 1, necessitates the need to get a number 1 receiver right away. And I know I see Jordan Addison there at 17, but I still think that's the realistic range where we could see the receiver out of Boston College, Zay Flowers, get drafted at 14. Stays home where he attended college. If I can spell, I'll get him. And I think they're going that route. Second rated receiver on my board.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal receiver. I really like him. Yeah, it's kind of crazy how he's jumped over the course of this offseason. Obviously, everyone knew he was a good receiving talent, but I'm excited for him. I think he's a great player, has phenomenal potential, could, be one of the among the elite receivers in the league in the next couple seasons if his 100%. Career trajectory follows kind of how he played at Boston College, if he can, level that up still. But
and yeah, some of you guys might be thinking, if you want a receiver, why not just get a safe flat? I mean, Jackson Smith was right there. He was picked at 11. I would have rather picked Jackson Smith, in my opinion. But Zay Flowers can play anywhere. He can play outside. They'll put Juju in the slot. Then he could play in the slot as well. I think he reminds me of Stephon Diggs and Antonio Brown. As a starter kit. He's obviously not there yet. I think he needs to clean up his hands a little bit, but the route running's there. The quickness is there. And I'm talking about quickness in the short area, which is extremely important when you're judging how a receiver can get open. It's not the 40-yard dash. There's a reason why McCole Hardman and Tutu Atwell are not touted as number 1 receivers right now, despite their speed. There are things they need to work on with the route running and short area quick. I think Zay Flowers already has that. So I think for the New England Patriots, this is a much needed position to address to help Mac Jones, because there's a lot of drama going on with that team and where the offensive direction is going. And I think the only way to help that is with weapons.
Yeah. Then going to number 15, the Green Bay Packers. Now here, I think I'm gonna do like kind of a out of the park-ish kind of player. That necessarily I wouldn't be surprised if they go later in the draft, but I think it'd be kind of fun if they took them here. And that is Darnell Washington, tight end from Georgia.
Wow. Wow. I was not expecting to. I thought you were going to go with Kincaid. I was not expecting Darnell Washington. Wow.
Yeah.
That is early. What's the reasoning? I get the intent. I know I get the athletics. I get the athleticism. But
yeah, so
give your
with the
take.
yeah, so with the Packers, obviously they lost their tight end. So I think going tight end here, regardless of who they go at tight end, is the smart move for the Packers. But I think Darnell Washington is just, he's a great prospect. He's a great guy with like really high ceiling. I think, he's a fast player, he's strong, and I think just his blocking ability, his strength that he has and can develop into a blocker is really, I guess, a focal point for the Packers, especially just with the Packers running back situation. And they got a lot of good. They got good runners, and so
They got two elite starting running backs on the same team.
Yeah, and so you get Darnell Washington, a guy who has, I think, the highest potential to be the best blocker out of like the big three. I consider him in the big three just because of where I draft him. But the big three of tight ends this class, and so I think the Packers.
Just to specify, who's the big three?
So you have Dalton Kincaid, and then you have it's Michael Meyer, right?
I think it's Meyer or Mayer.
Yeah, something like that. Anyways, those are my big three guys. And yeah, and again, I wouldn't be surprised if like, Darnell Washington is like a third round pick or something, just because he isn't necessarily as refined of a player as the other two. But I do think that he has a good shot at, doing good. And so I think he's a cool first round talent too.
This is a potential pick. It's a potential pick. So if he hits, Packers like win immensely. And it depends on the coaching staff. But most of the time with player refinement, you don't have that much time to like refine your skills that much. It all happens in the off season, in my opinion, which is why you see the jump from rookie players to second year players who have that time to work on their skills. I would have gone Dalton Kincaid here, but to fill the need at tight end, this is a good draft selection. I think where you touched upon this, but I think the refinement's like huge. I wouldn't expect any like rookie year, like Mike Ditka kind of things from Darnell Washington as far as stats wise go, but he's a ball of clay. Like he has same potential. He could pick up the pass catching role like more easily and get his route running in gear. But it's a solid pickup. Yeah, I'm not going to go out and dismiss the guy, whether he's picked like 15th or like 35th.
Yeah, and then with tight ends in general, at least nowadays, for the most part, they're not putting up those superstar numbers for like a couple seasons in the NFL anyways. And so regardless of who you pick, I'd give any tight end, any rookie tight end, at least a few, like until the end of their rookie contract to really see if they are the guy, unless they're just like abysmal. But like, I think any guy, especially the tight end position, is a pretty like difficult one to learn, especially because you got to block typically edge rushers, which are really, really dangerous in this league right now. And in addition to that, you're a receiver for your team, and you're going across the middle most times, and you're the ones having to take the hits from linebackers and whatnot. And so it's a big learning curve. And I think give Darnell Washington that opportunity to learn a couple of years and could be a great tight end for the Packers.
Yeah, we'll see how he's utilized.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's also like when you're taking hits from linebackers, it's also dependent on like how well you brace yourself. If you don't brace yourself that well for the hit, that can lead to a lot of injuries as well. So just a small side note on that, but it's a great pick nonetheless. I'm tempted to go quarterback here with the Washington football team. Now the Washington Commanders. But seeing Devon Witherspoon and Joey Porter still on the board, I still have to pick them. I still have to pick one of them because when I look at this team, they're committing to Sam Howell, who like 2 or 3 years ago, he was considered like the number one prospect
Mhm,
before the college year even started, like to come out of the draft.
mhm,
I think he has some moments. He was dicing up the Cowboys in the last game, and I think you should give him a shot because you already invested in the receiver position. So I'm not looking at receiver here, although I see Jordan Addison on the board.
yeah.
Do you have good scheme players in like Curtis Samuel? Jahan Dotson's a good player in the red zone to have, and you have a number one receiver in Terry McLaurin.
Uh-huh.
I think you're good as far as the offense and Brian Robinson as well. And like he's come
Uh-huh.
off a full year where he had to deal with a lot last year. So I think the offense is fine in my opinion,
Mhm.
and they don't need to address it right away. Should they prepare to take a quarterback with a potential like a? I know you how much you love Herndon Hooker. I would rather take him in the second round than take Will Levis right now just to fulfill a need and give yourself insurance right now.
Yeah.
I would rather take Hooker in the second round than try and squeeze Levis in the spot. So I'm gonna go with Devon Witherspoon here.
Juan Witherspoon. Solid pick. Yeah, then going to the Steelers, I think you have to go with another quality cornerback, Joey Porter. I think, you lost
Stays in the state.
yeah, you lost some players on defense. It's a phenomenal player to fall to that 17th position as well. Shares up your defense. Obviously, you got playmakers on offense, like we talked about. Allen Robinson just got traded to the Steelers. I mean, the only thing you could really invest in, I think, on offense is that offensive line, and then defense, obviously, just best player available. And I think that's Joey Porter. So you have to go for him.
I love the spot. I love the spot because people keep forgetting how good their defensive line is when you have TJ Watt like leading the way. And I think you're going to see a lot of ball protection out of him because of that pressure package. Like I think they're going to take a big step up, and he's a number one corner that can fill in for Cam Sutton.
Mhm.
Solid pick. Solid pick. 18. We're looking at the Lions. Last time we were talking about them, they invested in Jalen Carter, number 6 overall. So number 18, the defensive line is looking pretty solid. They invested a lot in their secondary. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then they just invested a wide receiver pick, and I'm forgetting his name already. Who's the guy? He's from Alabama.
Oh, Jameson Williams.
Jameson Williams. How did I forget that name? He's gonna have a breakout season in my opinion. And could go Brian Branch here. You could go Jordan Addison here. Could even go Lucas Van Ness.
Yeah, I think they could go cornerback here too. I still think that there's top tier cornerback talent at this spot.
Yeah, they could do that too. But I'm gonna go with Dalton Kincaid here.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
I just look at the loss of TJ Hawkinson, and yes, Brock Wright did some good things. And I was really tempted to go Brian Branch here because he's a really good safety. But
yeah,
I just look at their offense and led by Jared Goff. He's made a ton of strides. I give him credit. I just think if you load up one more weapon for him, it's going to be huge. And when I watch Dalton Kincaid work in zones and against man coverage and beating both no matter what, he gives me a lot of Kelsey vibes. I'm not saying he's Travis Kelsey, but he has a lot of skills that are translatable and win the same way that Kelsey did. And I think you won't miss a beat if you add him on our team, knowing that you lost TJ Hawkinson.
Yeah, I think tight end's a great just a value for the Lions to get. Regardless, again, like they could go literally any tight end like in my top 3, and I think that'd be a good position. Obviously, yeah, defense they could go. They got a lot of pieces in free agency with defense, so I think it's smart to continue to load up on offense, I guess, with a star tight end. But going with the 19th pick with the Buccaneers, I like Darnell Wright, the offensive tackle from Tennessee.
Wow, we're disrespecting Will Levis so hard right now. Or if this happens in the draft, he's probably thinking, where am I gonna get picked?
Mhm.
Okay.
I think the Buccaneers, they lost one or two offensive linemen in this off season. Plus, you got Baker Mayfield. You want to protect him. I don't like he can be good. He hasn't, but he hasn't shown it all the time. And so I
Yeah.
think it's just a good way to, set up your offense for a potential future quarterback that you draft in the next year or two. And I think that's the smartest move for the Buccaneers is again, I don't like the quarterbacks in this class after, the top three, I guess, that we have here. And so I think unless you're confident taking a later round quarterback and think that you could develop them into the guy, you roll with Baker Mayfield this season. If you suck, you get a high pick. With the high pick, you draft a quarterback, and now you have an offensive tackle that can protect that future pick for the next foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's a smart idea. You want to protect Baker Mayfield. Who knows what's gonna happen with Kyle Trask? I'm not a believer in him. Even when he was drafted to sit behind Tom Brady.
Yeah.
But I think for now, I think they're more waiting on what's gonna happen with Drake May and Caleb Williams in the draft next year. I think there's no one of these tank because they're gonna be the top two picks in the draft next year. They're like once in a generation type players, and if you land either of them, you're set. And a lot of NFL teams are slowly indicating that with their moves. And based on like the USC pro day, just teams salivating over Caleb Williams. There are teams out there, and I think Tampa Bay is one of them. So I have a feeling they're going to be competitive. They're going to try to be competitive, but I don't see them winning much games unless Baker Mayfield pulls a Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah. So if he's like Baker, he could. I mean, he was a number one overall pick for a reason. He's still in the league for a reason. And so, I don't think he's going to light it up per se, but he has the offense.
He has the weapons to do it.
He has the weapons to do it. And so there's always that chance. And I think, if he wins, it goes to the playoffs to the Buccaneers look like they got their guy for the foreseeable future. If he sucks, they might put in Kyle Trask to see what he has. And then if he sucks too, then they're obviously going to lose a lot of games and be in that position to trade up or pick at that number 1 or 2 spot.
Seattle's an interesting spot because they could go Will Levis, but then I see they wanted not Zach Wilson, Drew Lock. They wanted Drew Lock in return for the Russell Wilson trade. So they're thinking, oh, they don't have a quarterback answer at all. So you got to get a quarterback to fill the need. But then Geno Smith balled out, played like a top 10 quarterback that he is. They're a really good team, really good offense. I felt like they stalled a couple of points at time. They got a couple good pieces. Noah Fant from your Broncos. I don't think he's an elite tight end, but he's a guy that you could keep open because you have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett on the outside. Then you have Kenneth Walker, who I love as a prospect out of Michigan State. Absolutely love. I think they need that third receiver though. And I've heard some speculation, maybe on the pod, about Jordan Addison being quality wide receiver, but I don't care. I'm still gonna take him. I love the route running. I love the separation he gains. I think he would be an excellent number 3 wide receiver behind DK and Tyler.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a solid pick. And I think he's one of those receivers that are very much boom or bust in this class. So I think if he is sitting behind, 2 really talented receivers of different aptitudes, he has a great opportunity to develop behind them. He has a good quarterback, surprisingly how Geno Smith played.
Who'd have thought? Hey, I know you were thinking about picking him for the Chargers. Don't cap. I know it.
Nah, I wasn't thinking of taking him for the Chargers. I had in my mock draft, I had an edge rusher going to the Chargers, but I'm kind of thinking about him, maybe not.
I mean, they
It's
still have
more
Joey
so,
Bosa and Khalil Mack, but
yeah, it just
okay.
like, I mean, at least they're kind of like aging up, and it's like get a third guy in rotation. It's especially if you have elite rushers and you want to sub guys in and out of the game and just keep that constant pressure going. I thought that might be a good thing to do for the Chargers. Obviously, receivers another option for them, um, but I'd say a pick I like for the Chargers. I'm gonna go Jahmyr Gibbs, and
Wow. Is
and I'm
this
saying this under the pretense that Austin Eckler gets traded.
okay? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think he's talented as Austin Eckler. He may not even reach Austin Eckler's peak, but I think with the issues with Austin Eckler, I think it's a safe guy to get, because I know they last season they drafted Isaiah Spiller and like it's a early mid round pick, and
I'm
I
a
think
fan of him. I thought he was like a top tier running back.
yeah, I thought so too, but I mean over the course of the season, the Chargers really didn't play him at all. He played their other backups, or their second, third. He was basically their fourth string back, and so I think the Chargers, regardless, I think it's a safe pick to go Jahmyr Gibbs. You get another somewhat similar style running back with Jahmyr Gibbs as to Austin Eckler, and you go from there. I mean, you could potentially draft Zach Charbonnet here as well, but I think running back here is a safe pick for the Chargers, and kind of helps them look past the Austin Eckler era, especially just because he is technically an aging running back as well. And while he doesn't have like much miles on his legs as a lot of other running backs his age, it's still something to look out for and potentially prepare for a trade.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was more because Joshua Kelly made some strides that Isaiah Spiller didn't get as much playing time. Again, being in his second year, doesn't have to worry about pro day, combine, like the draft interviews, like that entire process. You naturally get better. So I think if they're looking to move on from Austin Eckler, I would be fine with like Spiller and Kelly having my backfield in the split committee. Even with this pick, I think him like sharing time with Isaiah Spiller is going to be bad for fantasy, but it's going to be good for that offense because Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the best receiving backs in the class. So like using him in the same role that you utilize Austin Eckler in the receiving game is going to be amazing. Like, and he can still do some things in between the tackles. I'm a little bit skeptical about him, like as a pure runner. But the way the Chargers use their back, aka Eckler, this is a good fit for their offense. Really good fit, especially like when you like catch a pass from Justin Herbert. So I like this pick. I would have gone Branch because I think it would have made your secondary that much more tough to deal with when you have an all-star in Derwin James as one of the best like safeties in the NFL, in my opinion. And having him with a competent safety at a minimum with a high ceiling like Brian Branch, who I also really high on as a safety from Alabama, Alabama would have been a good fit here. So I'm going to go ahead and pick him for the Ravens. I think he's one of the best safeties in this path. I think Ravens stick to their principle of taking the best player available. I was tempted to go receiver here, but I think the receivers that are high on my board are players I can pick in the second round for the Ravens on the GM.
Yeah, that's smart. Okay, so we're moving on to the Vikings now. Can you quickly show me which receivers are available again? I have Vikings taking receiver here.
Yeah, I have Quentin Johnson. I wouldn't recommend him, but they have Josh Downs, Jalen Hyatt.
I want to go Josh Downs for the Vikings here. I think he's I love him. I think he's a great prospect. He's another one of those like really good route runners that I think is super valuable. It's like I feel like not necessarily the most like physical receivers, but that are elite route runners that are quality enough to be taken in the first 2 rounds are like the ideal receiver prospect in the draft. Because you got like the big body guys. You look at like someone like N'Keal Harry, or he was a big body who could do those catches in traffic kind of plays. And you kind of saw how that turned out, or you have like the really fast guys. I mean, like John Ross, and I'm kind of just listing off busts like in those specific fields right now. But I mean, you kind of have those two as like the two ends of the spectrum. Even look at Mecole Hardman, who is another one of those really fast guys, or KJ Hamler, another one of those really fast guys that they're drafted really high because of that speed and that potential. But it turns into a lot of these, we need the guys that end up doing well are those elite route runners. And I think Josh Downs falls under that and is going to be insanely great to complement Justin Jefferson, especially with Adam Thielen leaving, and just kind of keeps their offense either as it was or better. And I think another thing that they could have potentially done is go running back, just with how they view Dalvin Cook, because I know there's like talks about, is Dalvin Cook part of the long-term plans of the Vikings anymore and whatnot. But I think regardless, Josh Downs is a safe guy to have for the next however many years you think you need him. And him and Justin Jefferson could potentially be a top two duo for like the next like 8 years, 9 years or something.
Yeah, I mean, and plus like a lot of comps I've been hearing about him are Jameson Crowder. And I don't think that's like a knock per se when you have targets going to Hawkinson and Justin Jefferson. Obviously, he's going to be the focal point of the offense. And now KJ Osborne gets this crack to be the outside receiver, filling for Thielen. So I think this is like another good situation. And I disagree with you about the running backs because I think Alexander Madison's a perfect starting running back that you just invested in I think he got a 2-year, $12 million deal from them. And I think he's a capable starter. If they trade away like Dalvin Cook, that they're not going to miss a beat. And I think the first round would be too early to invest capital in a running back. Again, just like receiver, I have running backs that are rated higher than the ones recommended to go in the first round or second round that you can get later.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't go too early for the running back here, especially when you have so many quality options like at edge and defense in general. And that leads me to the Jaguars. They recently signed they acquired Calvin Ridley by trade. So I think the receiving room is looking kind of nice actually. Evan Ingram's season last year has me optimistic about what he's going to do. Obviously, I hope he can still focus his energy on catching the ball with his fingertips and with the right technique. I think part of their problem against the Chargers before they came back and won was their defense. I think their defense needs a little bit of work. There's plenty of options here that they can go with. They picked Trayvon Walker last year with the first overall pick. And it's a little bit out there. And I'm surprised he hasn't been taken earlier, given the amount of potential. Lucas Van Ness is not a bad option, but I'm going Nolan Smith for the Jaguars. I think he's a pass rusher that's underrated. I've seen him mocked in the first round, but I could easily see him falling down so far because of the need for quarterbacks and options for the quarterbacks, cornerbacks, edge rushers, Bijan, receivers. Like I could totally see him slipping down the board this far. But I think he's one of the best edge rushers in this class. Obviously not ahead of Tyree Wilson, but he's within that tier. It's not that far off. I think Jacksonville built their defense around Trayvon Walker and Nolan Smith. And that they continue building off what it is like a serious contender for the Super Bowl.
Let's see. Second. So let's see. The Giants. I think the Giants are kind of like a fun team to like draft for right now, just because the past couple seasons you've had a lot of high picks, and so you've been able to fill a lot of holes. You've had some good free agency moves. Daniel Jones kind of came out of nowhere this season. Saquon Barkley looks like he's back in form. So I know there's talks about like wide receiver here, but this is kind of like the point in like, at least for the receiver talent for me, where I'm like, how many receivers do I like at this point, at least as a first round talent? I think there's a lot of really quality guys that I'd be comfortable taking in the second or third round in terms of receivers. I think like amongst them, you got like guys like Jalen Hyatt, Marvin Mims, Rashee Rice, Cedric Tillman. Those guys are good. I don't know if they're. I'd say Jalen Hyatt is the most borderline guy I'd be comfortable taking the first round out of that bunch. But right now, I do think that there is still a lot of good cornerback depth in this class. And I'd say I just go Kele Ringo right here.
Okay.
Cornerback out of Georgia. Think, he's played against good competition as a cornerback. And I think, it's a good fit. Giants, they have Chidobe Awuzie. And then after that, I think it's like starts to kind of like fade down in terms of cornerback talent. And even like Awuzie, I don't think he's a great number one corner. And so I think, you take a chance on one of these other high rated prospect cornerbacks. And, you could go him, you could go Cam Smith, you can go, what's his face, Emmanuel Forbes. Any one of those guys, I think, would be good options here for the Giants if they don't bite on a wide receiver. But that's how I'd have the Giants going right here.
Yeah, I like Ringo. I like Ringo. He's done a fabulous job in like some of the star receivers, over the past season. He can match up to them. And that's what you're being tasked with a cornerback, whether it's like a number one or number two receiver. Because nowadays the wide receiver 2 is another like Pro Bowl caliber receiver on like the top echelon of team. You're looking at the Giants to take that next step. You're looking at the division where Ringo's probably going against Devontae Smith. Having a Awuzie take AJ Brown, and then when you're looking at the Cowboys coming up, they just got Brandon Cooks. They have CeeDee Lamb. When we just talked about Washington getting underrated receivers from last year that are being huge contributors, I think you need more cornerbacks. So I think this is a good move for them. Cowboys, I could totally see them going after somebody like Quentin Johnson falling into the trap. I could totally do it. Yeah, or like Michael Mayer to fill in like Dalton Schultz. But I think it's way too early for either of those players. So I would not invest in them. I can't believe Elijah can't be still on the board. I want to take him so badly, but I'm tempted because I see two quality defensive line options here with Kancey and Van Ness. But they already have DeMarcus Lawrence and they have Micah Parsons, and I still see those two players being long-term options for them, foundational pieces. When I'm thinking about like third down pass rushers, I think we can get those later in the draft. So I'm gonna go Kancey here because defensive tackle I think is the need that they have.
Yeah. Okay. 27th with the Bills. I think they go Yeah, I think they go linebacker here.
Really?
Yeah, I just think, you lost a linebacker in free agency, and I mean you have Matt Milano still, who's a phenomenal player, but
underrated.
Yeah, but it's like offense. Sure, there's pieces you could add, but yeah. So like with this pick, like the thing is like the linebacker class this year isn't necessarily as talented as like years past, but like there's like two guys that I really liked this year, and that like the two of them, one of them being Trenton Simpson, the other being Diane Henley. I think both are really good cover linebackers, and like I think again, like I mean if you look at this list right here as well, I think any of those linebackers could really go in any order almost, just because I wouldn't say there's one standout linebacker who dominates over the others, but there's like really good skill between them. And so I think I'd like to go Trenton Simpson here. It's not the flashiest pick, but I think it's a solid player that fills a piece that they lost during free agency and can develop into, again, a great player that can, he's a great, from what I like seen and what I've heard he's like pretty he's pretty fast, pretty rangy. And so he can kind of fill in that role, like being that cover middle linebacker for his team.
Okay. Yeah. I don't mind that pick. I like the reasoning. I like Jack. This is just me being picky. I like Jack Campbell out of Iowa better. I think he's being super undervalued right now. He's a quality linebacker. I've heard great things about him, but I haven't watched the linebacker class that much to make a proper opinion about this. So I can't really rate this one.
Yeah. I do think a lot
of
these
solid pick fills the need.
I think a lot of my if I were to gamble, I would not gamble on the Bills taking Trenton Simpson just like straight up. I think it is good. I think it's an okay pick, but I do think a lot of these linebackers, like these top 6 prospects that are listed here, are gonna go like second, third round probably.
That's my thinking too.
Yeah, and so there's no surprise if one of them sneaks into the first round, just for a team late in the first round trying to get a jump ahead of all these other teams that might take them early second round, if you're scared about that.
That's valid. I also see Lucas Van Ness that's still sitting on 4. And knowing that you lost Von Miller during the season due to injury, and that no pass rushers could stop the run or rush the passer against the Bengals, like alarms me if I'm the GM of the Buffalo Bills. I would take a shot on one of these edge rushers. And I love Lucas Van Ness. I think he's like a top 15 type player. It's just because of like best situation to maximize value that he wasn't picked so far. So I would have gone with Lucas Van Ness here. For the Bills.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfectly fine pick for the Bills to take as well. Again, both are positions in need in my opinion, but yeah.
Let's see. I can't scroll down from here. Let's see. Defense. Brian Bryce is also a good option for the Bengals. Bijan Ojulari is also a nice option. I don't see them going Deontay Banks, but I don't mind them doing that. I'm gonna go with Lucas Van Ness. I'm gonna trust my instinct and go with the best edge rusher still on the board.
Yeah, I'd say I think I'd still have them go defensive back, especially just lost Jesse Bates in free agency, and your defensive line, or at least your pass rush and stuff was like pretty solid for what I thought. Because I think that Trey Hendrickson, who I didn't think was going to do that good, but he put another.
He flashed at the end of his Saints tenure, and he put some good things on tape. The other thing I could have done with the Bengals, because it's the one player, and this is the one team I think is a good fit for this player, is Michael Mayer. But I really love Irv Smith's talent. I think he's a sleeper this year. The only thing that stopped him is injury. And I think in that offense, like he's gonna have a big year getting open because of Chase and T. Higgins. So I'm willing to take a risk on him and then wait in the draft for guys like Luke Schumacher or Sam Laporta, who I have rated higher than Michael Mayer. Rather than take Michael Mayer now and then lose some of the quality edge rushers you see here. In this case, really good edge rusher. Who you got for the Saints?
I'm gonna take Brian Bressie here, from Clemson.
Really good pick.
Yeah, I think he's one of the better players available, especially on the defensive line right here. Especially like this class in general, I think has a somewhat thin like early round defensive tackle. Where like the skill gaps are quite large, and so I think you get a guy like this, and you shore up your defensive line. I mean, you have Cameron Jordan, who's at the end of his career. In all honesty, he might have he might play another 3-4 years, if that. But you see, I mean, he doesn't look like he's slowed down, but still, I think you get a guy like this who, again, shores up that defensive line for you, and can be that defensive lineman for the future. So you have him, you have Marcus Davenport, you have Cameron Jordan is for now, and then you kind of just build off of that.
Okay. Uh, yeah, like I was saying earlier with the Eagles. Let me just remind myself of who we even picked. Christian Gonzalez. So solid pick for him at 10. So don't have to worry about the cornerback. You could
Mhm.
pick Cam Smith again to outright replace Bradbury and I'm forgetting his name already. Darius Slay. You could do that.
Mhm.
One way to go about it. Um, this one's tough. This one's really tough because they could do almost anything here. I honestly I can see them trade down and pick, but let's see who they have. Uh, Jalen Hyatt's a really good pick. That's a really good
Yeah.
pick. Um, Luke Musgrave, I like him. Jack Charbonnet, that's worth an investment.
Yeah.
Devon A-Chain, Keishawn Booty, Sam Laporta down the line. I just think they have a good piece and um blanking on this tight end. Well, what's his name?
Oh, my mind. I was just thinking about him too.
Dallas
The tight.
Goddard.
Yeah.
Oh my god. The amount of names you forget just getting stuck in the football is ridiculous. Yeah, Dallas Goddard. I think
Yeah.
he's an elite tight end. Don't want to mess with that. You could go two tight end sets and work that way. Um, this would be also a good landing spot for Hendon Hooker. But I think when I'm looking at what they're trying to do, to maximize the window that Kelsey's there, but
Mhm.
also plan for the future, I think I'm gonna stick with my guns and go with Anton Harrison,
Mm.
offensive
Yeah, I think
tackle,
that's a great pick. Yeah.
because even though he's listed as a tackle, he can play like he's pretty position versatile.
Mhm.
So you can start him out at guard either side, and
Mhm.
then have him learn the guard spot. Um,
Yeah.
so when you have Jurgens come in to replace Kelsey, you can put him in a plot at center who is used which is the position he used to play, and then have Harrison fill up the gaps while Lane Johnson still being the lead right tackle he is on the
Mhm.
outside. Um, and then if something happens where Lane Johnson gets hurt, you have your swing tackle here that can pop in to replace.
Mhm. Let's see. I had the Chiefs going Anton Harrison for a while too. I think he's a great, pickup for them. But it was between him or a wide receiver for me for the Chiefs here. Um,
Oh my goodness.
yeah. I mean, I guess they could go cornerback too. I mean, like I really like Cam Smith. I'm surprised that we had him falling out of this first round. I think Cam Smith and Isaiah Foskey were players that could have gone in that first round that ended up not here. But I think the Chiefs try to take a shot at Quentin Johnston.
Oh my goodness. Please, if they do that, they're not going back to the Super Bowl. um, yeah.
Yes,
So
the
let's
full
see if
result.
we can get the
But
full result.
yeah, it should show. But um,
No, not Target.
oh, anyways, um, yeah, it did the same thing for my. Oh, I guess it shows the pick. This is kind of lame. Anyways, but my reasoning behind it, again, I agree with you. I don't think he's good per se, but I think the Chiefs, you got to add another big bodied weapon on that offense.
So you pick
Um,
Quinton Johnson?
like that's a wide receiver talent and
He,
I think
he could do that, but I feel like they're better options. Like I
yeah,
would have picked Cedric Tillman if you're looking for a big body option.
yeah, and I just think that it's a huge boomer bust prospect with him, and of all teams that I guess trust. I feel more comfortable with the Chiefs, like with how good of an offense they always field and how they're always like they do a decent job at creating opportunities for their guys. And so
Yeah.
yeah, like I think you could go you have you have Kadarius Toney, who's your kind of other, I guess, feature receiver on that team. And I mean, he's obviously a good, like, I guess that shifty player, run after catch kind of guy that I think is super valuable. You have Travis Kelce, who's kind of your big bodied guy. But then I
And
think if
Sky
you have
Moore.
added, yeah, and then you have Sky Moore, who's another again fast player. But if you have Quentin Johnson, it's kind of like a change of pace from a lot of that. Besides obviously Travis Kelce, who's their big bodied current weapon. But I think you have Quentin Johnson, who can potentially learn some things from Travis Kelce in regards to how be an efficient, big-bodied player. And then obviously, Patrick Mahomes is great at getting his receivers the ball. And so if it is a lot of one-on-one deep ball, 50, catches that he has to make, Patrick Mahomes is the guy to make those throws for you. Andy Reid is a great offensive coach. I think he can scheme a lot of receivers into his offense. And I think you saw the Chiefs, while their receivers weren't necessarily the best talents in the world last season, when the receivers needed to make plays, they were able to make plays. And I trust the Chiefs to do that with a guy like Quentin Johnston.
Yeah, I think the last point of your argument was probably the strongest one. You look at the receivers they had, Tony was still learning the system. Sky Moore was in his rookie year. You had Juju. And then you had McCole Hardman. Nobody's sniffing at those wide receivers getting scared at those moments of their careers on the Chiefs. So I totally see the reasoning for investing in a guy like Quentin Johnson. You hear DeAndre Hopkins and the trade rumors to the Chiefs that everybody's scared out of their mind that would happen. And I hear you. I think one thing they could do as insurance is get Hendon Hooker on the Chiefs. That would be the one landing spot where I'm comfortable with him going to, because like we mentioned in the previous pod in my thoughts, he played in the air raid type scheme in Tennessee. It's not really a pro style offense that you see now, but you're seeing more and more teams implement some concepts like that. And you just saw Patrick Mahomes effectively translate the skills he learned in an air raid offense to a pro style offense in the second year with the Chiefs to take off. Now I think he can learn a lot from Patrick Mahomes, recover from that ACL and not feel pressure to start right away. He continued to develop his game, and then he could either spot start for Patrick Mahomes when he gets hurt, or request a trade to a team that needs him once he has his skills developed. And I see him as a sleeper starter. I know you love Hendon Hooker. That'd be the one spot I could see him play there. If I was going wide receiver, though, I would probably go Cedric Tillman.
Yeah,
a lot of things he pointed out. To me, he's a mix between Mike Evans, I would say, and he has AJ Brown, but is closer to. He's not as good as both of them, but it's closer to Mike Evans because he could really win in the vertical game and know how to position himself to not take nasty shots, but also catch the ball at his optimal point. And he has some shifting too.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be the Chiefs if they didn't take a offensive position at the end of the draft, first round, that didn't pan out very well. So
yeah, exactly. There's that too. I was so scared out of my mind when they drafted Clyde because I thought he'd be used in the same way that he was used at LSU. It turns out that was wrong, but it was fun doing this. We'll post the picks that we made in the show notes down below, so you guys can take a look and see the quick mock draft. Next week, what we plan to do is we plan to record before the NFL draft happens. We do have a couple conflicts that are preventing us from doing live streams during the draft. That would have been so much fun. It's always an option, but you'll definitely hear our reactions to that. So we'll put those notes down below. Let us know what you think of the picks. Did we severely mess up, having Kalijah Kancey and Lucas Van Ness fall down so far down the board? Give us some takes on that. I'm gonna go ahead and tune into the Clippers and Suns game and see how that's going. I have no idea what happened to the Celtics game at all or the next game, so it'll be interesting to see. Corsian, any last minute thoughts?
Let's see. I thought I had one. We were trying to get other socials started. Trying to get onto Spotify and whatnot. So stay tuned for those types of updates. If we have it done by the time we upload this video, it'll be in the description or whatnot, but just stay tuned for that. And that's all for me.
You heard the man. Stay tuned. Follow us on social media. Give this video a like if you liked our picks, liked our reasoning. Offer us some comments on how we could get better or what worked well. We'd be really interested to see how we can grow this podcast as we get along. And with that, peace out, guys. See you next week.
Yeah.